Okay, I have a 2011 Ford Explorer here. I'm going to be replacing the engine in this. It's got the 3.5 liter V6, and I'm going to go ahead and show you what I found here. Okay, I come in here to check the oil and see all kinds of white frothiness on there. And if you pull out the dipstick, it's the same way. It's just dripping all that white frothy stuff. Now, I knew that this was bad when I got it, so I intended on replacing this, but it actually is still running a little bit, enough to kind of move it around, but you can't get over like 5 or 10 miles an hour and has no power. So anyways, that's what's going on with it. I've got another engine ordered, but I'm going to go ahead and get started removing this one. Okay, I just wanted to show you the inside of this briefly and the reason that I decided to fix this. I got a pretty good deal on it, and it is at, I want to say, 100. I got 183. There we go. You can see we got 183, 549. That's our miles. It's very nice. It's got a backup camera and everything on here. If I can get this screen to come on, it was working. I'm probably not doing something right here. It's not coming on at the moment, or it's rebooting one. But anyways, it does. The screen does work. It has a backup camera. It's really nice. It does not have the navigation, but it's all a touch screen. And just wanted to give you a quick view of this. It's a nice vehicle. Third row, definitely worth fixing. It's a little bit dirty, but overall, very nice vehicle. A few blemishes on this side. These tires are all new. It is 4-wheel drive. It's the XLT. You can see on this side it's absolutely perfect. So look forward to actually being able to drive this thing. I had to have it towed, but we're going to get an engine. Like I said, I'm getting an engine, a really low mild engine. It's only got like 10,000 miles on it, and we'll talk more about that later. We're going to go ahead at this point, I think, and get started removing some stuff up here and just work on getting this engine out. Okay, we got a lot of things to remove. I think we're just going to start with removing some of this shroud and stuff up here. And this is just a foamy piece. We're just going to slip it off this cover. And then there's some little snaps back here. Those have been broken, but some little push snaps that go back in there. So we kind of start getting an idea of how much room that we got to work with. I've already got an idea of how I'm going to be coming out of here with it, but I want to get a better view at everything, so I'm just going to start taking things off. It's not a bad idea to do a lot of labeling, just so you're not getting things mixed up later on. So I think the next thing we're going to get us a wrench and get on this band here, and we can either disconnect this here or we can disconnect it right here. I just push that and it comes right off. We'll just slide that over like so. And this connector here we're going to get on. There's a little lock underneath there. It's got to be pulled back that you can't see at the moment. Give me just a second. Okay, I can't see this connector, so I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to go ahead and unsnap the box. And we've got right over here, you'll need to take some pliers and move that right there back, that little band, and we're going to wiggle this off right here. You can see. Just go ahead and nothing's going to come off easy, I can tell you that. So there's that, because that attaches to this. So we'll go ahead and loosen this up right here. We're going to pull this up, and I'm going to kind of flip this over where I can see this connector. Just using this flat. Okay, now we'll just give this a little tug. And then we'll make sure that we don't have any other stuff connected here. And it's feeling like we still got a snap. And we do. It's kind of hidden right under there. Let's go ahead and get that one. And just pull that back. Just watch your tabs and slide them out so you don't break those. So now I can kind of flip this over here a little bit. Okay, we got another vacuum right here. We're going to need to take our pliers and get that band right there as well. Or actually it's going to be easier just to disconnect it right here. Just give that a tug up. We'll just have to remember that this one goes back here, and then that one goes back to that spout right there. Okay, so now we've got everything loose there. We can see, take a look at this, and we can just press right there with your thumbnail. Once that lock is pulled back, press right there, comes right off just as easy. Got a little bit of a little snap going through there, a little Christmas tree snap. Just give that a push back through. Okay, and a pair of needle nose works real good for popping that out of there. So now we've got this here completely loose. We'll just go ahead and set this aside. And we got a really dirty air filter, which, you know, a blown head gasket can do that. Now we'll just take a look and see what all's holding this. It looks like we've just got these 8mm that are connecting this, but we're going to go ahead, I think, and get this out of the way. I think it's just these two 8mm right here. We're going to take those out. Okay, I just got my little micro. If you don't have an 8, a 5/16 will work as well. I'm just going to get that one right there out. And this thing should be loose. Okay, with those out, there's just a grommet down there. If you just lift up, this comes up and off of here. It's a little bit tight, but you can squeeze it out of there, and you can see that little grommet, or the two grommets rather, that those pegs slide into. I always say this throughout my videos, but you get to this point, it's a good idea to start putting the screws back where they go. You'll never remember where every screw and nut goes. So I like to just put them back. That way when I go to put the part back, there's no guesswork. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get this negative here, and then we'll work on getting the positive and getting this battery out next. Okay, we got a couple of these tin, using a couple of these tins on this hold down. Go ahead and get those off. Okay, now we can just lift that up. We'll just put these back on here so we're not losing these. Okay, the positive, we're just pushing down on this clip and pulling that back. And then we got one here that we're going to probably have to do the same thing. Okay, this we're just going to loosen this up, and we'll take this off, this whole piece. And I know we'll probably have to separate that, but that's good enough for the moment. Okay, I'm just taking this little wire right here, you can see, and I'm going to label that too, because that's something that could be missed or mixed up later on. But we need to kind of separate these wires out. So I'm just going to get this loose. I'll put the nut back on, and we're going to also label this so we're not getting mixed up where that goes. Okay, we've got a couple 13 millimeters here. One there and there we're going to take out. Okay, now we should be able to lift this up and off here if we don't have some other. Okay, we got one more we missed down here. It's buried in the leaves. One more down there. Okay, I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see something besides 10 millimeter little tiny bolts holding these battery trays. It's actually got 3 up here, and it looks like we've got another one right down here as well, so I'm going to have to get that one out. And then we've got this wire snapped into it, we'll have to pop that off of there. Okay, got a flat bar I'm just using to kind of pop these little snaps out of there. They can be pretty stubborn. Okay, now this, once those are out, you can just lift it up off of that stud, slide it over to the left. See how it has the tab, and that slides down into that. And of course this goes down to the bottom there and had that bolt going into it. Okay, I took the time to put my little bolts, 13s, back where they go there. Okay, down here we got a harness we're going to disconnect, but we also have a 10 millimeter for these grounds, and we'll want to make sure to put a label on these so we're not forgetting these. See how it runs over to the engine, and then this runs into the harness. We're going to go ahead and take a 10 millimeter and get that, and then we'll put a label on it, and then we'll just disconnect this right here. Okay, now there was the 10 millimeter. This comes off. Below that there's an 11. That's the studded part. So you got to remove that to get the next wire. Now they're both loose. We'll put our stud back right where it goes. And then we'll put this little 10 millimeter right back on there. And we'll go ahead and label these so there's no confusion later. Okay, I'm just getting ready to disconnect this. Now you have to push down with a flat screwdriver or something right behind here. Right behind there where you see that gray piece. You need to push down on that black part there on either side, and then you can lift it up. Otherwise that locks it in there, and it's still gonna probably be a little bit stuck because it's been on here for a while. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get my other hand here. Okay, you can see all the dirt and stuff that kind of tries to make its way in there still, and that's kind of making it stick. But as I was showing you right here, that kind of locks it. You have to push down. You see how that, you push that down with a screwdriver because it locks. And it's popped up, it locks on to this and it won't turn it loose. Or it locks on to this rather, this latch. So you got to push that down. So we got that loose. We've got our ground loose. So all that is loose from this side. I think what I'm going to do next is go ahead and get underneath. You can see the drain spout down there. It's probably a 3/4. You can see it's right down there. You can also use like an Allen to get in there. We're going to go ahead and start draining this coolant out of here. Now I like to just, if it's not dirty, I just reuse it. Now this, I don't know, the head gasket's blown, so I'll see what it looks like. But we'll go ahead and start draining it out here anyway. Okay, we got that drain in there now. I just went through the top with the 3/4 and got down there on that and then finished turning it by hand. We'll go ahead and that's going to help it drain down there. Looks like it's missing a lot already. So we'll just drain out all that we can and then we'll start popping the hoses off here. Okay, while we've got that draining with the coolant, I'm going to go ahead and switch gears here. We're going to work on taking the lugs and just getting them loose. We're going to be lifting the vehicle up and we're going to get some blocks, some jack stands under here. But right now I'm just going to go through and slightly break these loose on both sides before we go to lifting this up. And then we're going to get it on blocks and we're going to work on removing some stuff over here. So I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to go ahead and lift this up over here and we'll get some blocks under it. Okay, so we're just getting ready to get this wheel off. You can see where I've got my jack at there, and I've got some blocks back here on the frame. I'm going to put a jack stand under here as well. Okay, just to show you where we're set up on each side, I've got blocks here so you can get on that frame real good right here. Got a jack stand there for backup. And over here, we're set up under this because I didn't have the same piece to get a hold of, and I'm not sure about how flimsy that is, so we got blocked up under here, another jack stand here. Now I have to be mindful of putting jacks and blocks, or jack stands and blocks, in my way because we're going to be having to do a little work under here. Okay, the next thing I'm going to get started on is removing this bumper. And if you come into the fender wells, we've got some, I believe these are 7mm. We've got some Phillips going in here. We're going to go ahead and remove these. We've got a few underneath to remove so we can pull this around enough. So we got some more 7s under here, and we're going to get basically this inner flap loose where we can get in here and get what's holding the bumper. And then once you get both of the fender wells, the other part's pretty simple. Okay, when working on these fender wells, it starts out with like some 7mm and then it goes to Phillips. And then as you get to the bottom underside under here, you got some 8mm holding it. You can see we got that part loose. We're working on taking out these little snaps. Now these just like to spin on you. So So when you go up here to get one and try to back that off, a lot of times it may just spin and it won't try to back out. It's supposed to do like this one and back out, and then once you get it out there so far, you can usually just pull. Now if it doesn't, you have to get underneath, like this one right here. If it was spinning on, you'd have to get underneath with this and kind of pry it up, kind of separate the screw from the other part there. So just be mindful of that, and if that don't work, you can always just yank it out of there with some pliers. But like I said, sometimes they don't want to cooperate, but they're just little plastic snap-in type. So you can see the assortment we have here, and looks like back here we just have the push-in style, which I don't know if these have been replaced, but I'm going to try to find some of these because I'd rather pop these out. If you got the little trim tool, then those come out real easy, I think, better than the other ones. But so we're taking everything loose. This is going to aid in our visibility later on. So you can see we got this side over here all loose, and so I've just got to get a couple more. Looks like this one and this one and this one right here, and then we got to push in right here, and I think that's about it, and the other ones may be broken. Okay, there we got all those, and this just will drop down and we can get it out of the way. You can see you get a little bit of room. Anyway, you can see in here a little better. So we needed to get to the bumper, so we're just going to take it completely out, and then we'll put this back later. Going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, we're going to start here on each side with these inner shrouds out. This will just pop out of in here, and you can see a Phillips screw right there. We're just going to pull it back to here carefully. We don't need to remove all of it, just to get to that Phillips screw right there. Okay, with that screw out, you should be able to give this a pull easily. It just snaps in there. So we got that part loose. Now we're going to move over to the other side and do the same thing. Okay, we're going to come underneath the front end. We've got some 8mm. Just lay under here. And you just start taking these out. And you got one there, got one here, and one right here. So go ahead and get those. Okay, and there's those 3 8mm out of the bottom. Okay, up here on top, we're going to go along here, take all of these 10mm out of here that run all across this front. And then we've got a couple little push pops right here, and we'll get this piece up and off of here. Okay, and there we have this piece. We'll go ahead and set that aside. Okay, with those out, the bumper will just kind of fall down, so you have to get a handle on it. I got to get my wires disconnected here on each side. There's plenty of slack, but they're just a little difficult to get loose here. Okay, so we got that big old bumper off there. We're going to work on getting these headlights out now. There's really not much to them. So we got a 10mm here, 10mm here, and I believe that is all we have. And then of course the wire connectors that we got back here. We'll get those disconnected as well. Okay, these two are real simple. You just press down here. There's no locks. Just press down on each of them and they come right off. So go ahead and get our bolts out. We'll do the same thing on both sides. Okay, now there is a 10 millimeter over here. Somebody's got some glue on this one. Actually looks like a 13 or something. Well, actually we got, let's see, I think that's the only other thing holding it is this bolt here. This side it looks like a 13. Okay, so yeah, with these three out, this just pops out of here. It kind of sits in there pretty tight, and then this clips back up here. So we'll do that on the other side. Okay, with the headlights out, the next thing we're going to go ahead and remove is this brace here. So we got 4 of these 13 millimeters on each side. So we're going to go ahead and take those out and get this out of the way. Okay, they do have this tack welded right here, so unless I want to remove that, I'm going to have to work around this for now. I'm just going to leave the bolts out and just try to work around it for now. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and remove the bolts. I've already got this one. We're going to move that one down there. We got these up here. Same thing on this side. We got the one down there, one I got out right here. And up here we're going to go ahead and start disconnecting the hoses. I'm going to take it loose here and start getting any electrical connections. And we should not have any Freon in the system. So we're going to have to get the condenser disconnected up here. Okay, all I've done is disconnected my coolant hoses right here, and they were kind of glued on there, so a small flat screwdriver to work those off. And I'm just I've got the hood propped up because this is going to come off in a minute. I had to take the hood prop out from there, so make sure to get it secured safely. And I'm going to go ahead and get back here. We got the hoses are disconnected, our coolant's out, so we're going to go ahead and just disconnect. You can see this wire that's running across and over to there. It basically clips on, and it's got a connector down at the other end there. I see one going to the pressure switch on the AC. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect the electrical, and there's not very much, and essentially we got to go ahead and get this as well, because this is running through here. We'll have to take this off and remove the cable from the other side. I'll show you that, but mark this so you get it back in the same spot. No guarantee that it's going to be the same spot when you go to removing stuff like this, but it'll at least get it close enough and you can adjust it. Okay, so you can see how I marked that, and now I'm just working on these wires. I want to show you, this has these little clips that go down, they pop down into there. You'll need to unclip that. You got a clip right here as well. It has to be pulled out of there. It's just like these little Christmas tree type snaps, so that needs to pop out of there. And any other clips, got one right here, pop that out, screwdriver or whatever. You got another one here. Okay, then you come down here, there's one connector that hooks to that right there, very easy to remove. You just push down on that, pull that off. It's got a couple of other little snaps that go into these various holes on the front. You'll need to unsnap that. And as we follow it over here, we're snapping in to this part of the frame, which really ain't a big deal. We could probably get away with leaving this. However, it may get hung up later and get in the way, so we've got an assortment of connections over here. It's not a big deal. They come down here and it hooks to this sensor. We're going to label each of these and where they go. You see how they route. You got a ground. It's coming down here to our windshield washer fluid. We're going to disconnect those, and then we've got another one that's running around here, and we're just going to disconnect that right there. So we're going to get this whole harness, essentially label everything where it goes so you can get it back to where it goes, and we're going to take it and fold it back over here out of the way. That way we go to removing the engine, we don't have to fight with any wires that are running across and run the risk of breaking or pulling a wire out of a connector. You don't want to do that. It gets to be very difficult. You have to order connectors and fix it, and I've done it. So just the main thing is to be careful and not take any risk with stuff like that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the time to label each of these, and we've got everything else loose, it looks like, except for this hose right here, which it's going to be easier. It's either going to be easier to disconnect it here or just take this whole entire coolant bottle and set it aside, and I may just go ahead and do that because I can disconnect it here and just keep all of this basically together. So I think we're going to do that. We've got some 8mm holding it into place here, you can see. So I think we're going to do that. We're just going to take the whole bottle with this whole front, just keep everything together. You know, less likelihood of mixing something up or losing something. So I'm going to go ahead and label these, and we'll work on disconnecting this whole harness. Okay, we've got everything labeled, even labeled where the little clips were going, because I'll never remember. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull all this back over this way. See, we got everything loose. We'll just pull it over here and set it for now. We'll probably have to move it again, but we just want to get that out of the way. So now we got that disconnected. I think we're going to go ahead and take those 8mm out of this, and this thing should just lift off of here instead of taking it loose. Looks like we've got a clip right here we need to get. We're going to go ahead and pop that up and out of there. All these hoses still look pretty good, but I will say that, you know, it's up to you if you want to replace your hoses, because sometimes you can't tell and they're thin on the inside. And the one that's you know, got the most heat coming through it, which would be this one over here, is going to, you know, take the most abuse. So it's not a bad idea. I'm thinking the engine I got's coming with this, maybe this top hose at least, because I would like to replace this one. Anyway, we're going to get that coolant bottle loose. I still got to get this here loose because I have to pop this cable out from the back side. May just go ahead and do this next. Okay, so we just got an 8mm here. So we did have these marked. I'm going to pop the cable off, and I'm just going to stick this back on. Okay, we got this flipped over. Looking at it from the back side, it's pretty simple to get this out of here. Just give it a little pull, or move that and just work it around this here. May have to fiddle with it for a moment, but just remember how that pops out there. You can see how I'm just going to pop it up that way. Let me get a little screwdriver. So we're just going to pop that up and off of there. You see how that just pops? It just clips around there. And then this will push through. This part right here will push through. You push these in on both sides real firmly. Just like that. And then that just pops right through there. So we got that loose. Just remember, put it back on the same way. Okay, now I just realized something. If you pop this part out of here first, it's easier to work this out of here. You can see all I have to do is tilt it and it comes right off. Okay, now we can just pull this through. Goes through that hole. Comes around the bottom, so we can route it back. You'll just do it the same way there. You see how it just runs. So we got that disconnected, and looks like we've got another clip right here we need to pop off of here. We are going to have our transmission cooler lines running here. Now you'll want to have a pan ready and put something like, I usually put a bolt or something to keep the fluid from leaking out, and because if not they'll be dripping and stuff. So you take these loose, you just get you a pair of pliers, pop these back, and then these will come off. Just wiggle these off. Sometimes they can be kind of stubborn, so I'm going to get on that next. Okay, I'll forewarn you on these transmission lines. I had to come through here and push them off, but you got to be careful not to bend your lines. So you got to kind of support those as well. But I will say that these have been the most difficult cooler lines I've ever seen in my life to remove. I mean, it'd almost be easier just to get you some more. I got them off there, but man, they're really stuck. And label also which one goes where, so you don't get those mixed up. But we got them loose. I'm going to get back on this over here with an 8mm and get this loose. I think that's the only thing I like, except this right here, but we'll find out if there's anything else, and hopefully we'll be lifting this whole thing up and off here. But you got to get creative. So I just put some bolts to plug them off, some good sized bolts. One of them's a wheel stud, and I've got some little rubber pieces and got creative and just stopping up so it's not dripping out. These are the main ones that will drip on you. You'll definitely want to have an extension to get over here to these. It's going to make it a lot easier. A longer extension, you'll be able to get down there and get these without any trouble, that you don't have to go down in there and mess with it a whole lot. I've got a longer one than this if I need it. This one's like a foot. So I'm going to go ahead and finish removing these two. It has a little hook thing there. You got to lift it up and out of that slot. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this line right here. Okay, I just popped the little Freon line out of there. Now this is loose. Just be careful when working around your Freon lines. You don't want to bend any of these up. And we're probably going to start with removing this one right here. It's a 13. And we're going to tape this up to keep any unnecessary air and moisture out of there. Okay, and even if you know that the system is empty, put on safety glasses and use caution anytime you're removing any of these Freon lines. You don't want to take a risk. So we're just going to get this one right here by the sensor. Okay, I've got a little plastic Ziploc bag and I've just taped over that right there. And we've got another place right here. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to make sure we put a bag or something over it, tape it over, keep any air out. Okay, so we have the 3 bolts. We got 1, 2, and 1 up top. Same over here. You got 1, 2, and then 1 up top. We've got these out already. We got the air sensor here. We need to disconnect, and we're just going to pop it from here and here, and this will be loose from this. Okay, I got another connector I popped off right here, and then this for this hood light here. Go ahead and pop that off, get that out of the way, and just kind of double checking everything. And we're going to go ahead and get these bolts out, and it's just pretty much just sitting here. We'll go ahead and get that bolt out, and then we should be able to just lift this thing straight up and off of here. It's going to be a little bit heavy, but we got all of the water out, so it shouldn't be too bad. And then we'll actually have room to do whatever we need in here. Okay, I got the coolant bottle over here. Now there is a 10 millimeter on this AC line, goes into this side here, the frame. I took that loose so I had some wiggle room so I could get this coolant bottle through there without bending that or anything. So I think we're ready to go ahead and lift it off. Now these will try to catch, so you got to kind of fold these over and then we're just going to lift it straight up and off of here. Okay, here we are with it setting down off there. Just lifted it right up and out of there. We're just going to set this out of the way. Got the overflow on there and everything, so this gives us plenty of room to get the engine hooked up and bring it back. Now we will be removing that cowl up there as well, because when I rig it up it may try to hit on that. But we should have plenty of room. Okay, so we're going to just start disconnecting things up here a little bit at a time. I'm just going to go ahead and start with this AC line here. I'm just going to disconnect it here, and so we'll tape it up and pull it back over here out of the way. If we have to, we can go ahead and take it loose up here too, but I don't think it's going to get in the way. But that's what I'm going to be doing. We got to get our fuel lines, fuel return. We got to get these disconnected, and we don't have a whole lot of electrical connections to do. We want to try to get everything that we can up here. Got to get these heater hoses. I'm probably going to disconnect them up here at this. I could more easily take this whole thing off than to go back there and try to get those loose at that that firewall. So I'm definitely going to take these loose up here and separate them, and just anything else. We got to get our cable, so like I said, I'm just going to kind of just start on one thing at a time, no particular order. Get on this 13 right here and get this loose. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and remove this line with the dryer. I'm all but certain to probably bend this thing if I don't get it off here now, so I'm going to go ahead. It's just got a 13 right there. We'll go ahead and take that. It's got a bracket right over here on this side. We'll take that loose. Go ahead and just take this completely off. Okay, then I want to move on to this shifter cable. Now this back here, you have to get under here with a little pick tool and pull these up. They got little clips. You pull like there while you lift up on this on both sides, because they hook in to that metal tab. So you pull on both sides and then lift this thing up, and it'll come off there. Okay, this part back here, I've just got some spreaders. You could use a screwdriver and just gently pop this up and off here. It's really stuck, so may have to spray it with a little bit of WD-40 here. I don't want to break it. Okay, and there you can see how that pops off there. These old brittle plastic connectors start making me a little nervous when they get old. Okay, on this one I was telling you wrong. You actually go through right here and you push the clip right here on both sides. You got one there, You can see I was just remembering a different one, but push both these at the same time, or get one side going. You push those back right there and it'll lift up and off there. Okay, with it up here like this, you can see those little nubs. Why you have to push those back. They just kind of snap into there. Now it's lifted up. So we got that free, and that's fine, just as long as it's not attached there. Okay, make sure to get you a rag around this before you go to trying to take this fuel line loose. You got to slide. There's two parts to this. You have to pick up on both of these tabs here. You can see them. And then you slide this back like that. And then the other part, I believe there's another part. It may be a single lock. But anyways, I'm going to get a rag here before I go to shift. And it may just be a single lock here. It may push off there. Okay, that was just a single lock, and it pushes off there. A lot of times they'll have double locks on these. This one did not. And it just pushes back. So we got that one. Probably get some tape when this dries out and put on there so we're not getting any contamination. Now I can tell this one back here, I believe, has the double lock on it. This is like the gas evaporative line. You got to spread both those, just like I showed you on that other one, and push it back. And they don't like to move. This may be a single lock as well, it looks like. And let's see. Okay, so it slid back, you can see. So let's see if it's going to unlock. There we go. Okay, these are both single locks. Okay. So we got the fuel line and the return. We got that disconnected. We've got a connector coming in here that we're going to have to deal with. And I think we've got the majority of the vacuum tubes. I'm going to go ahead and get on these heater hoses. So when I feel like we've got most everything up here, like I said, there shouldn't be a lot. I'm going to hop underneath. We're going to get the exhaust. We're going to go ahead and try to get the flex plate bolts out as well while it's up here. We'll just go ahead and take all those off. And I'll probably remove the very most bottom bolts going to the transmission as well, because when I set it off on the ground, it's going to make it more difficult, and I'll have to lift it back up and everything to separate it. So we'll probably do that while it's in here as well, and then we'll figure out just how we're going to get rigged up here. I may not even have to remove this, which will make things a little easier for me. So we'll see. Depends on how I can rig up to it. Will depend on how difficult that's going to be. But you can see there's not a lot of connections. We got the connectors over here. We got a connector going up here that we're going to get, but not a lot of connections. Everything out here on the front is out of the way. Other than being like a few ground wires or something we might have missed, there's not going to be a lot to get. Another thing we get underneath, we'll have to get the CV axles and stuff. We'll get to that. I'm going to try to get it as much of everything else first before I do that, because then the CV axles just sitting there dripping the whole time, and unless you can get them plugged up. Okay, I use my snap ring pliers. If you can get these to lock, it'll make it real easy on moving at least that part out of the way. And again, I'm going to make a mark as to which one goes to which, so there's just no confusion later. Okay, and take and lift this hose up right here a little bit and spray some WD-40 in there. It'll make it easier to push it off. Okay, we got our heater hoses off, as you can see. I noticed a ground over here, 8mm. We're going to go ahead and take that loose and mark that as well. Okay, because this is a really flimsy piece of metal and this is ridiculously tight, I'm holding it with this crescent. As you can see, I'm sure that yours is probably going to be the same way. I said I was just kind of holding that to break it loose because it was just wanting to bend this little tack welded piece of metal. This lower part of this tab just should pull out of here. Okay, so I switched over, got underneath here. We're taking these exhaust bolts off. These are 15s. And I'm just getting the front ones on this front exhaust manifold. And then we're going to get back here. We've already got these sprayed down really good. We're going to get those. Probably get something under here. It's got some hangers. We'll probably support this with a jack stand temporarily. Just so it's not just dangling on the flex line back there. We'll probably get a jack stand right about in there. I don't think that this is going to be in my way enough to have to take the exhaust out, so I'm probably going to leave it unless it gets in the way. I'm going to get these front two, and then we'll get back there and get those. Okay, we just got our exhaust. I just got it sitting on that coffee can there, and so just something to hold it up so it's not bending the flex part there. But we've got it loose, as you can see, nothing to it. We're going to go ahead and get on this center torsion mount, and that's going to be a 15 as well. And I'm going to take this and this right here. We probably could get away with just taking it loose here, or maybe taking it loose here. I don't know. We may just see if we can get it loose here and pop it down where it's out of the way. I mainly just don't want it to be in the way or anything of anything I'm doing. Okay, so I took this bolt out and I just loosened that one up a little bit right there, just where I could push this down. I think it'll be fine. This is the bolt. It holds this right here. So we got the exhaust, we've got the mount down here, we've got mostly everything up top that's critical. I think we're going to go ahead, we got a couple of these little plastic screws. We're going to take this off, go ahead and get to our flex plate, and I think we will, like I said, remove these bottom ones here that are going to be difficult to get to, that are here on the bottom. So we'll do that, and then we're going to probably get out here and we're going to get our CV axles out. We'll have to attack that, and that's equally as fun, but we need to get those out so we can pull this engine and transmission up and out of here. There's really not room to get these apart in the vehicle, and I don't even think I would want to. So this is what we're going to work on next. We're going to get this off here, and we're going to get in here and start working on taking our flex plate bolts out, and we'll have that done, and then we'll get on these lower bolts. We'll remove these. We got 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that will be good. Everything else we can get from the top side. Okay, I've got an 18mm holding the flywheel here, or I mean the crank pulley here, and I've got another 18 6-sided setup in here to break it loose, and these are really tight. Okay, I'm just using my little slim ratchet, and it was really snug. Break it loose. We're getting the first one here. I believe there's just going to be 4 of these. But we've got the first one. And we're going to just go ahead and rotate it around out here with our 18mm ratchet out here on the crank. And we're just going to keep doing the same thing till we get all of these out. Okay, there's our 3 flex plate bolts. There's only 3 of them in there, so we have those out now. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do before we quit for the day is get on these bolts right here. We just need to get these 4 bottommost. We can get to the rest of them from up top. We're going to go ahead and take these out, and mainly these 2 right here, because I could even get to that one, but it'd be more difficult. So we're going to take these 4 out. Okay, so we got those 4 out. Very easy to take those out. And I think that's going to be it for the day. We'll get back on it in the daylight, and I think we're going to get on these CV axles next. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and remove this cowl here. I'm working on these windshield wipers. I've got the 15mm nuts off, and we're just going to get these off first, and then we're going to start taking these little clips out here and popping this up and off of here. I have yet to figure out what's holding this harness here. It's got a this weird cover on it here that snaps on here, and I'm still kind of debating on how I'm going to get to that, but I know it's got to come off of there, so I'm going to work on getting this out of the way where I can take a closer look at it. And because I'm just about debating on whether or not just to cut that thing off of there where I can see, but I'm pretty sure it's just wires back in behind her, so I may have to even go in through the dash to get to this dang wire harness. I really don't know, but we're going to go ahead and take this off. It's not a big deal. Okay, the trick to popping these stubborn ones loose, you just put that nut back on there a little bit. You'll take a pry bar or something, or a screwdriver, pull up a little bit, and then hit the head of that nut with a hammer. Usually a couple of hits, you'll get it loose. These little side pieces will come out, and this just kind of clips back in here. Just pop the whole thing out. And now we can work on getting the rest of this out of the way. Get this propped up. So we should just have some snaps, I believe, in here that we need to get out. Okay, this underneath plastic part, you got a couple of these. Squeeze these with needle nose to get it to pop up and off of there. There was one little metal clip down here on this end that was on there, kind of holding that down, and then that was pretty much it, and it just pops right up and off of there. So now we're just going to go ahead and work on this here. We'll may or may not remove this brace here. Okay, and as you can see, I was about to mess up trying to take this apart from out here as I wasn't sure on that. And actually, all it does is clip right in here under this. It's got a couple of harness connectors going into the computer, and then it's got a connector right here. And then this essentially just lifts up and off here. And I was prying on it, so I'm sure I'll take and put some tape back around this. I just want to make sure that we're not going to have any problems with this leaking, but it just slips right up and out of there like that. We disconnect this right here, and that disconnects. So we've got that, we've got a stud right there, And then of course we've got these little, you got to push down with a little screwdriver and get these to unclip. We've got 2 of these. And once we got these 2, we're going to push down there with a screwdriver and this will pull back. We'll cover these up and just pull this straight back, and then this will unclip from there. Yeah, so these clips you got to push down right there while you're pulling back to get that to come back. And we'll cover that up. But you see we got this loose, and we will have to, well, we're probably going to have to take this brace because it may not allow us to fit these connectors through here easily. So I might have to go ahead and take this brace off. I really didn't want to disturb it, but as long as I'm not taking these over here loose, shouldn't disturb the struts. Anyways, we're going to cover those up with something. Go ahead and get this out of the way here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to get this wheel off. Of course, you're going to need to get it jacked up and on some jack stands, or jacked up at least. And the first thing we're going to do is just go ahead and take a 3/4, and we're going to go ahead and remove the lugs and get this wheel off. Okay, so now we can go ahead and remove the wheel. I've got it locked up. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is punch out this little center cap. Okay, we'll go ahead and place the wheel back on and put the weight back on the tire. Okay, I've got a 32mm axle nut and a breaker bar. And like I said, put the weight back on the vehicle. And in this case, I've just got a rock wedged under here, and we're going to go ahead and start breaking this loose. As long as it will hold still for me. Okay, and this is really tight. You can see I'm getting it loose. And once you get it there, you can go ahead and switch back over to a ratchet. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this axle nut completely off of here. Okay, and there's our axle nut, our 32. Now we'll go ahead and take our wheel back off. Make sure you have it jacked up and on a jack stand. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to get back here with an 18mm, and we're going to be taking this one here off this main bracket, and this one down here. So we're going to go ahead and start removing these, and we're just going to take and strap this entire brake caliper assembly up and out of the way. So we're just going to get this bottom one, and we'll get on this top one right here. Remove this whole thing and get it out of the way. Okay, the brake caliper out of the way. Go ahead and just pop this ABS out of there. That'll give you enough slack. Now, before we do anything else, we want to make absolutely sure that this CV axle is able to move. We do not want to put this in a bind when we go to popping this out of the knuckle. So as you can see, it's moving freely. So we don't want to pop it out of its knuckle there, out of its socket. Okay, we got a 21 on this side here. We've got a 24 over here. We're going to be using a breaker bar. It's going to be really tight to get this loose. Once I get it loose, we'll switch over to the ratchet. You can probably get them loose without holding it because they're so tight. Once it starts loosening up, you'll have to switch over. Just want to go ahead and finish removing those. Okay, so I'm holding it on that other side and working this nut loose over on this side. And we're going to take these bolts completely out. Now, before we take both of them completely out, we're going to make sure that we're also supporting that CV axle with one hand. It doesn't take much with these new CV axles to pop them out of socket, and they're ruined. So So I'm just finishing on the top in here, getting this loose. Okay, I'm just pulling these bolts out. And sometimes they come easy, sometimes they don't. Okay, and I'm going to get a hand on the CV axle. I'm going to push it back. You do not want this to fall down and put pressure on that CV axle. I'm going to try to push it back, pick up on the knuckle while I'm pushing that back. Okay, so just finished popping it out of here. Now also going to support this with a strap as well, because like I said, if it pops out of its socket, it's ruined, and you just wasted $100. Okay, now of course if your purpose is replacing the CV, it ain't gonna matter if you mess it up, but like in my case, I'm just removing it because I need it out of the way, and this is just kind of a removal video. Okay, for this next part, you're going to need a really long, I've got a 3/8 extension. You're going to be going up in here and getting a couple 13 millimeters loose. You can see both of those. We're going to go ahead and take both of those loose. Like I said, I'm just coming right in through here. I've got my CV strapped up where I'm in no danger of messing it up. We're going to go ahead and take both of these nuts out here. And I've got probably about a 3-foot extension on this. These aren't real terribly tight either. Okay, now with that loose, we can go ahead and carefully support this and start lifting this out of here. Now we'll want to get a pan under there to catch some of this as it drips. Okay, pan in place, we'll come on out with it here. As you can see, just as easy as that. Okay, here's a look at it setting out here. And if you're going to get you another CV axle, at this point you would be separating it here off of this joint shaft. And that has to be kind of knocked off there. It really fits snug on there. It's like no joke. So anyways, it is out. Okay, of course you want to break these loose before you lift the vehicle up. Just going to finish spinning all these off of here. And make sure you got jack stands and wheel chocks before you go to removing any tires. We'll go ahead and take this off. Okay, with the wheel off, we're going to push this cap out. Okay, now we're going to put the wheel back on. A couple lugs will be good enough. Okay, get yourself a 32 millimeter axle socket and a breaker bar. Okay, you'll want a long cheater pipe. You also want to lower the weight back down onto the wheel. So lower the jack back down and break this loose. It's going to be really tight. Okay, with it loose, let's go ahead and finish spinning this axle nut completely off of here. There's your 32 millimeter. Okay, let's go ahead and get the wheel back off. One of the first things we'll want to make sure of is that we can push the CV axle back. Okay, so it should be somewhat movable. We're not going to be able to push it completely back, but it's a little bit, we know that it's not hung up. Okay, now we're going to be taking this whole brake caliper off. Let's get an 18 millimeter. It's going to be pretty tight. We got this one here on the top, and then we got one down on the bottom. Go ahead and get the one on the bottom loosened up here. Okay, if you can see where I'm at on the bottom. I'm just taking this whole bracket from the knuckle. Okay, we got both of the bolts out. You can see here. Just going to wiggle this up and off of here. Set it there a second. Okay, now we just took a bungee strap and just strapped our bracket up there out of the way on that spring. Okay, now we're going to get to work on these here. You just have to have a 21 on this side to hold it, and you need a 24 over here on this side. An extended ratchet or breaker bar will be necessary here. It's going to be really tight. So we're just going ahead and taking these completely loose. This is just the top one. Let's take the nut completely off of there, and then we'll get on that bottom one. There's that first one. I'll just get on the lower one down here and take that nut completely off. Okay, now before we can push these out, we want to make sure, like I said, this is going to push back. We don't want this knuckle and the weight of this falling down and pulling on this right here. If it pulls on this, you know, if you're not replacing it, it's going to ruin it. So if the purpose is, you know, just to take it out and you're needing to do something else, then you don't want to damage it. So make sure you don't get it in a bind, because then it's going to actually pop it out of that socket. So we're going to be careful. Make sure that we push it back as we're pulling this down out of the knuckle. Okay, so I'm sliding out the bottom bolt. We'll lift up and try to get this top bolt. Now another thing I'm going to do over here is pop this little ABS sensor off. There's a little rubber boot right here to give that slack. Just pop that out of that little indentation right there. Okay, now I'm going to push back on this CV axle as I'm allowing this to drop down below these notches here. I want to make sure that I keep the CV axle supported, so if we're not trying to damage it, and then we'll also get it up here and kind of support it a little bit while we work on the next part. Okay, we just have a little bungee strap holding it up here, and it's just run around now. Just hold it while we're working on this back here. So now we're going to get back here using a big crowbar, just a common crowbar, and we're going to get back here and we're going to get behind this and pop this out. Okay, you can kind of see where I've got it running behind there. We're just going to use a little bit of rocking motion. I'll quit hitting the camera. Okay, and there we go. Popped it loose. All we got to do is pop that clip. Now have you a pan ready, because there's going to be a little bit of fluid leaking out. Okay, and here's the CV axle out. Now we just got to work on getting a replacement. There's that clip that holds it in there. Okay, so we got the drivers and passengers CV axles out. Now at this point we're going to go ahead, this is all-wheel drive, we're going to get under here, we're going to work on taking the axle running to the rear loose from the transmission. So for that we're going to get underneath. Okay, I'm back here at this flex exhaust. If you come up behind here, you can see this flange. It goes to the transmission, back to the rear axle, and we've got 4 13 millimeters. There's another one on this other side here, and I'm just using a little ratchet 3/8 drive. These aren't too terribly tight, and like I said, I've got a mark there, and I'm just going to go ahead and take all of these completely out, and we'll be able to disconnect this, and we should have everything disconnected except for our motor mounts, and we'll go ahead and get rigged up and hopefully get this engine out here pretty soon. So I'm just going to take all 4 of these out. There's nothing to it here. Like I said, just make sure to mark it so you get it put back in the same place it was. Okay, you will need to tap this from side to side with a hammer to get it to come loose. it doesn't just want to just fall off of there. But now it's separated, so we're going to go back up top, I think, and get rigged up to it. Now I may go ahead here in a second and drain as much transmission fluid out as I can, because I don't want it dripping out the CV axles, and I don't have a good way of stopping it up, and it probably needs to be changed anyway. Okay, I'm going to get on this plug right here, see if I can get this drained out, and I'll just put back whatever I drain out of here. Okay, this is really dirty too. I mean, this should have been changed a long time ago. So I'm just going to drain as much out as I can, and we'll put some clean fluid back in. Said I'll pour this up and figure out exactly what I've got, and just put the same amount back in. About the easiest way to do it. But anyways, we'll drain this out. While we're doing that, I think we'll get the lift over here and start getting it rigged up. Figure out how we're going to lift it out. That should be everything. We'll just keep an eye on stuff and make sure that we haven't forgot anything. Okay, I got some 8mm here holding this heat shield. I'm going to go ahead and take those out. I've got the chain rigged up to that lift right there. Just kind of got a loop. I'm running it up here. I'll need to disconnect this O2 sensor here. Just press down, pop that off. Take that heat shield off of there, and I'm going to try to run a strap from back there around here, I think. That's how I'm going to do it. Okay, we got it rigged up here. 3 seatbelt straps. Got it tied to the chain back there. We're going to see how this works. Either way, it'll be fine, even if it leans one side. 10mm. Go ahead and take this little battery bracket here with the grommets. Take this off so this is not getting damaged coming out. And then when we get this, we'll go ahead, and I'm going to just take, I think I'm going to take, there's some nuts on the transmission here, and then there's some coming from underneath this as well. So I'm probably just going to take that whole thing off of there. Okay, I've just been working on this mount over here. I hadn't got the lift over here yet. There's a couple bolts that are going back on here. I just took those two out, kind of loosened these up, these two, and then essentially probably just going to lift this thing up with this on here. And same over here. We're going to take these 3 big ones out and just lift this up and off of there. So I'm going to go ahead and get the lift now. Okay, I'm rigged up to it here. I said I'm working on taking those 18s off over here for this motor mount. And then I'm going to take these, and I'm just going to start lifting it up, and we'll see how it goes here. We'll just say keep a close eye on things. Just taking these 3 out that are down in here. We'll start lifting it up. Okay, so got the mounts loose, and I'm just lifting it up. I'm going to see how it's going to go. It's definitely raising up on this side, and it's hitting over there. I'm going to start trying to work it back and just see how high I'm going to have to go up with it here, and just kind of carefully bringing it back and looking out for stuff up there. But as far as I know, there shouldn't be anything else connected, but we could always miss something. There could be like another O2 sensor or something back there that I didn't get. Okay, I'm back in here at the exhaust again, and there it was a connector I missed here. There's like this heat cloth here with a bolt. There is this little sensor that was bolted here, and a connector, a big connector. You got to push down that, and I got another connector from the front there that I got to get. That's here on this part. So this part of the steering, and I've got to get this disconnected from the engine. So I'm going to get up to the front there and see if I can get that other connector. Okay, I had to remove this heat shield here, and I could actually see the connector here going to the power steering here, and you just push down on that, but it was just difficult to see it, so I had to get this whole thing disconnected because this is connected to the harness, and it could have broke these wires here. So now that we got that, I don't see anything else. We're going to get back up top and start lifting it again. Okay, I'm just bringing it forward here, just making sure there's nothing hung up. Like this throttle cable was hung up on a part. I had to get that clear. It's just kind of resting here. This side's lifted up quite a bit higher. I'm just kind of keeping an eye on things, and mainly like the AC lines, the fuel lines, etc. And I've got all the connectors clear. Just kind of double checking everything, but we're just bringing this thing out here whole, and for the most part really haven't disconnected a lot, but mainly just, you know, be careful bringing it up so you don't forget a wire connector and break something like that. Okay, I really don't like the angle I'm coming out at here. I was hoping this thing would level out more, but I should have been way over here getting a hold of it. So I'm having to watch this master cylinder, and then on top of that I'm hanging up right up here on this AC compressor on this bracket. So I'm thinking about just going ahead and taking that AC compressor off of there, just to give me a little more slack, because it's getting close to my master cylinder over here. But it's just because it's just leaning so much at an angle. But anyways, I'll have to rig it up different going back in for sure. Okay, I actually wound up leaving it on there. I got it free over here from the master cylinder just by kind of guiding it by hand. Just kind of pulling it this way and got it free from there where it wasn't going to hurt it, and then got above this point right here to where I can actually start moving it forward. But I just really hate that it was slanted so much, but at this point it doesn't matter because we're free of everything on this side and that side. So now I can go ahead and start bringing it up higher and bring it on back out. Okay, and as you can see, we've gotten everything but just that power steering. Just hooking to the power steering there, and everything else was disconnected. It will kind of twist on you, so I'd kind of hold it and pull it around the way you need it, but I've got it up clear enough I can start bringing it back over this front portion here. Now if that wasn't tack welded, I would have just removed that so I wouldn't have to go up near as high with it, but this is fine. You can see about how high up we went. Okay, here it is completely out. You can see what a monster this thing is all together. So we're going to get it set down. Like I said, the lower bolts were out, so all I got to do is start moving connectors and stuff over and start splitting the transmission apart from the engine. And I've got another engine coming in the morning or sometime, and we're hopefully going to get this swapped over without a hitch. I know I'm going to have to get you know, the exhaust manifolds are going to have to be swapped over. Going to have to get some gaskets and all that, and of course we're going to have to get the transmission disconnected. So I'm going to just try to get it set down here and start working on some of that, and hopefully not making a mess. So we already got the flex plate unbolted. I showed doing that, so when we get the bolts out of the transmission, we'll be able to separate it no problem. Start wiggling it apart. And here's a look at your engine bay with that beast out of there. So for the most part, everything is pretty easy to disconnect, with the exception of getting to the connectors on that power steering, and those were rather difficult to get to down there, but I've got them anyways. And I didn't even think about it till I started pulling the engine up, and then I seen a connector running down, so we got that. Not a big deal. But overall, if I would have came out more level, it would have came out of here a lot easier than what it did, but it went at an angle because I didn't have it leveled out. But we got it set in here on some blocks, And like I said, I'm just going to get to work removing things. I've got to swap over the exhaust. Got to get the transmission separated off, so we're just going to get to work on this tedious job of removing connectors and the harness and everything, and labeling where everything's going to go back to. And you know, it's a good idea to, a lot of times when you get them from the salvage yard, you got a lot of damaged stuff and cut wires, so you pretty much have to reuse a lot of this stuff a lot of the time. Like I've maybe seen one engine come with that wasn't cut with the harnesses and stuff. Okay, I've got the harness going to the starter and going down to the alternator. I just pulled this whole thing, the battery and the power steering harness. I've just kind of got it pulled out of the way so I can got the start out of the way so I can get to these bolts more easily. I said I've got the very bottommost bolts, so we only have to get the ones that are up here at the top, and there may be a hidden one down in here actually, because I just now seen it, so we'll have to get to that as well. But I'm hoping that I could keep this. Okay, I just noticed a bracket here that we've got going to the engine that's supporting this, so we may in fact have to remove this here to make it easier for mating this up. And this is just the all-wheel drive, but it may make it easier for me mating this up because there's a bracket there and everything, so I'm going to have to kind of play this by ear. I know this is coming off, this exhaust manifold, so I may just go ahead and pop that off there. But anyways, we're going to get on all these bolts up here, and hopefully I'm going to wheel this out of the way. I'm just hoping to get this here done and get a little bit of prep work done before tomorrow. Okay, I've been working on removing this exhaust manifold over here. You have to remove the lower portion there before you can get to all of the bolts on that. And then I got to this little hidden bolt that was back here going in to this, and said I'm definitely going to have to remove this. By the looks of it, it looks like it's going to try to hang up with this on there, so that's going to have to be removed, it's looking like. But anyways, we got that off there, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on removing all of these, and we'll kind of label them as to where they go, make sure we don't get the wrong bolts going into the wrong spot. These are going to be 13s, by the way, and I'm going to get something to kind of roll this off on here too. Okay, I've got starting to work this apart here. There was a couple of little, like little hidden bolts down in behind this that were kind of tricky to get through. I had to get a swivel, and now I'm just separating it. It's coming apart easily on this side. I don't know if this is going to need to be removed or not, but I'm going to try to get it without removing that. Okay, we did get it off there without removing the all-wheel drive over here. Just kind of slipped it around. It was in kind of a bind, so it didn't want to come loose. I was kind of like out of kilter a little bit, and it was in a bind, and it had a little more difficulty getting it off. There's this one connector you got to disconnect here, and other than that, we got it off of there. We got it on my little mover dolly, and just be careful, don't mess the face of your transmission up. I was using like a putty knife and getting in there and prying it. Went ahead and got this exhaust manifold off. I'm going to be swapping those over. I'll have to get some new exhaust manifolds. I'll probably just find a Felpro, a little bit thicker and a little bit better. Here's a good view of it out. You see just the 3 bolts going into the torque converter. I hope this transmission is good. Judging by the blackness of the transmission fluid, I have my doubts. But the engine I got going in here is only like 10,800 and something miles on it, so I'm real excited to see how this is going to perform. It's like this intake and everything makes this thing seem bigger than it is. It's just really the way that it's set up. But we got, like I said, I've got to get the other engine, but I've got the transmission off, which is what I wanted to accomplish today. And anything else that I do need to move over, I can figure that out when I get the other engine in here tomorrow. So like I said, I've just been taking out those bolts and slowly working this this transmission off here. I would highly recommend doing like I do and draining out. I drained out almost like 4 quarts is what I got out of there. I know that's not going to be enough to get it clean, but I will put some more in there, clean, run it through, drain it out again until I can hopefully at least get the fluid clean, if this transmission is going to be a viable transmission. I hope it is, because I sure don't want to take all this back out to have to replace that. But anyways, I think I'm going to quit on this for the day and just kind of clean up and wait on my engine. It should be in, like I said, in the morning or sometime tomorrow. Okay, I got my new motor in here today. This is actually out of a 2018 Ford Flex. It only has 10,800 miles on it. You can tell that it's very new looking by the condition. It's actually, the harness hasn't been cut or anything, but I'm not going to be able to use the harness, unfortunately, because there are some minor differences in this harness. Now the motor, I was checking the block. The numbers match on the heads and the numbers match on the block, and so far I don't see any differences in the intake, the oil pan, the valve covers, or anything. The only difference I found was up here. There's an extra little coolant spout. I don't want to remove this, so I'm just going to cap it off. That's the only difference I've found so far, but you know, I hadn't went over it with a magnifying glass yet either, but I'm definitely going to have to start off getting the harnesses off of here and swapping those over. So I got my old harness, but there were some minor differences. But you can tell a condition of this. It's a very nice looking engine. It's very low mild. A lot of the stuff up here appears to be the same. I don't know if there may be a few of these that I don't have to swap over, like the harness for the coil packs and stuff. Well, you know, I'll see, or the ones going to these solenoids and stuff. Those are looking, but whatever I have to take off, I'm going to have to take off the main part. But really happy with the condition of it. Doesn't appear to be anything broken or damaged. Of course, you want to check everything over good and check all your threads and make sure you're not going to have any problems. But definitely, I said I'm going to have to plug that off. I know that's the first problem. Now I could take this completely off because it's basically this part of the unit that runs under there, but to save having to do all that work, I can just plug it off. It's not a big deal. Plus this one's newer and it's going to be in much better shape. So it just gives you a look at the engine. Of course, you got to swap the alternator, the compressor, and everything, but wanted to show you this here setting here. It's pretty much just a little bit of tedious work from here on, just swapping things over and making sure everything's hooked up. but it's like nothing difficult. It's really unfortunate that I couldn't use this harness because harness is like brand new, and it's, you know, of course, much better to have a newer harness. But it's not going to be able to be used, so we'll just have to put the old one on there. So that's what I'm going to be working on first, is getting, I'm going to get the harness and everything. I'm going to cap off that one, and we're going to get those harnesses swapped over. And actually, I'll probably just remove this harness here after I get the transmission on. I may go ahead and just put the transmission on before I worry about that. But anyways, I think we'll do that because I've got this one off. I'll go ahead and just remove this and start working on getting this transmission in place. I'm going to get a little bit of grease on these and in here, and we'll start trying to work this into place. As long as you get the right angle going in, you can get this to match up pretty easily. And I've got my transmission sitting over there. It's really oily and nasty. But I'm going to go ahead and start matching that up. Like I said, basically you just got to work with it. You get your transmission over here. I'm just sliding it around on cardboard. And if you need to lift up the engine, you know, you got it hooked up to a lift or whatever, you can kind of go to tilting it and just kind of manhandle it a little bit and work it and slide it into place. If you got an extra set of hands, that works too. But we'll just want to make sure that we get it matched up on our dowels, and then get our bolts halfway started, or at least try to get a bolt started, and definitely don't get anything cross-threaded. Now, it's also a good idea before you get started on putting your transmission to go ahead and check every single thread going around here, because you don't want to get this thing together and figure out you got a damaged thread that you're going to have to fix. So we need to find this stuff now. So I'm going to go ahead and check all those, blow the threads out, and we'll get the transmission over here, get that hooked up, and then we'll start going through the process of just swapping this wire harness, which is nothing to it. Just swap one, put it back where it was at, and then hopefully we'll work on getting this thing in, get something done here. Okay, I'm just getting ready to mate it up. I've put some grease on the dowels and in the center there, and I've just got the engine safely supported here so it's not going to rock or anything. And the idea is I'm going to work this back around just like I took it off, and we'll slide it back around here and try to get it into place. Just going to be kind of moving it around by hand the best I can. If I have to, I'll get the lift over here, but I think I can get it to line up. Once you get these close to these locating dowels and get a bolt in, you're home free. Then you can kind of wiggle it the rest of the way, but just don't get any of them cross-threaded. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and hook this up before I mess with the harness. Okay, I've got it over here, and I've got the bolt started right here, sliding it around. I kind of got a block under here, and we're just sliding this side, and we'll get this mounted up, and we'll start bolting the rest of them in. Okay, I got all the bolts. I'm using medium Loctite around the perimeter. There's the one that's right here that goes in behind this. I'm just putting that in to 13. We're going to come back. We're going to torque these down to 35 foot-pounds. Okay, I'm still swapping over the harness, and I realized that the coil packs are different and the injectors are different. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more work. Basically, the whole harness is being changed over, and I'm going to have to pop the intake off. I've already got the one off of this one. I had to take it off in order to get to the wire harness that was underneath. So that's just what I'm doing. I'm just slowly doing it so I'm not getting stuff mixed up. And I'm going to have to take the injectors out, the fuel rail. I'm taking the intake off, and right now I'm putting the old coil packs in because you can see that these are nowhere near the same. Now, surprisingly, these solenoids up here seem to be connecting up okay. If I have a problem, I can just swap those over as well. They appear to be the same as the others. So anyway, basically just you're looking at a harness, and a lot of the coil packs and injectors and stuff like that. Of course, I capped off that, and like I said, these motors are the same through many years. So up, Ford Taurus, Flex, Edge, and I've even seen them cheaper in a Taurus, but I got a really good deal on this one out of the Flex. And this is out of a 2018, and we're going to make it work. It's tedious having to swap stuff over, but just take your time. And I'm just moving the coil packs, and I'm going to get the injectors moved over next. Okay, on the intake, there is an additional sensor here, but this will plug the hole here, so I shouldn't have any problem. Just going to leave that, and because I want to use the newer intake, and everything else looks to be exactly the same. The only other thing I had to move is these little rubber grommets over here, and that was it. Okay, a couple of these sensors are different. It has, on the original, it has the same sensors. Now I had a couple of new ones anyway. It's just a cam sensor, and I'm putting that because the other one won't connect up to my harness. So this one is the one that will work. And let me show you the other one. Okay, here's the one that's on this engine. As you can see, this won't connect up. It's different. It's got a different end on it than what this one here has. You can see that. So to take that out, and I'm just putting, like I said, putting some new ones in. Because I've got a couple new ones, but I could have used the ones off the engine as long as they were okay. So I'm going to have to change that one, and I've got to take this one out right here, and I've got to put the other one right there so it'll connect up to my harness. Okay, so there's the harness come with the engine. Like I said, with the exception of some stuff, they're not a lot different, but there are those differences, and for that we can't reuse it. But I said this one's fine. This will connect up this cam sensor. This one back here is a different one. Now, even though that they're made a little bit different, the heads are the same, so that sensor will go in there. And now I'm just working on getting the old harness back around here. Like I said, I've had to change out the coil packs and everything. So we're just working it around. You can see I got this side, but we will have to go ahead and get this fuel rail off. Don't know, probably could just reuse the new fuel rail, but I will have to swap the injectors over. Either way, it's going to be just as much work. But this one is newer, so I may just use that. Just use the newer fuel rail because they look pretty much identical. I did the same thing with comparing the intakes. They were pretty much identical with the exception of that one sensor right there, and it's plugging it off the hole there. So with it unplugged, it ain't going to make any difference. So I think I'm going to go ahead and work this around, and then I'll work on maybe getting on that fuel rail there. Okay, now the way I usually do this, I spray a little WD-40 down in each and every one of these little injectors, and it'll help break that loose, and usually you can pull it up. Now there's a clip on here to remove the injector. You have to kind of like pry out, and so you don't want to just pry on it too hard. You may damage your clip, but ideally you want to try to get a hold of it and pop them out of here with those clips on. And sometimes I have to use a pry bar and start working one at a time. And if it may be easier for you, simply remove the clip. Just push that clip off, remove your upper rail, and then go ahead and just take the injectors out one at a time. But either way, it doesn't really matter. It gets the same job done. But so you can easily just push these off with your finger, or a little screwdriver at the very least. They're not that difficult. But I'm going to work on popping that up. I've got the WD-40 sprayed in them. Okay, and sometimes when you pry this up, you'll find that the little O-rings will stick down in there. We'll just go down in there with a little screwdriver or pick tool. Because you see I had at least 3 of them there that stuck down into the seat there. So I'll need to go ahead and get those out. Now one thing I can definitely do is use those O-rings on mine, because that one over there has got 183,000 miles. I don't know how good the injectors are, but at least I can use the good O-rings. Okay, as it turned out, the injectors were the same, so I had to put those back on. I'm using the new ones. The connector was the same. For some reason I was thinking they were different, but they're not. They are the same, so disregard that. I'm just putting the intake back on here. It's got a couple locating pegs I was working on, just running the old harness around here. Like I said, just putting the intake back on, and pretty much everything else is like just ready to go. I got the harness on the transmission, and other than that, it's just a tedious task. The coil packs I did have to transfer over, so I had to get those swapped, but the injectors and all that's the same. The only other difference was the little cam sensor was up under here. So that's about it. I'm just going to finish on swapping everything over, hopefully get to working on putting this in. Okay, on my exhaust manifold, these studs are backwards on this one, so I have to swap them from here to here, basically here to here. They're all reversed on this flex. And another thing I forgot on the intake, there's an extra sensor here. I don't know if I mentioned that, but that's going to be plugging that anyways. It won't be plugged in, but this will plug the hole. But this intake was in better shape. So anyways, I'm just working on this. I got to switch these around. I'm going to start getting my exhaust manifold on. I've got everything else hooked up, and so we're going to get these exhaust manifolds on so we can get done here. Okay, I've been working on connecting everything here, and been kind of doing a check over. I've got most everything checked and got the bolts in. Said the 4x4, the bracket, got the exhaust manifolds, I've got the motor mounts on, exhaust manifold on this side, we got the alternator, air compressor, and the belt. Everything is on, the motor mounts are on, the wire harness, everything is connected. So when we get it in, we should be able to just set it in with the mounts and be able to just start connecting up the hoses and the wires, etc. But definitely it's going to be, got the straps just rigged up around through the mount here in this manner, and I've got this run around the front of this mount. So that's how we're going in with it. Like I said, I've just been doing the tedious job of moving the wire harness. So that's all I've been doing, and getting my exhaust manifolds. Or it's just time consuming. It's nothing difficult. It's just time consuming and making sure you get everything back where it goes. Said the only thing I had to change was the coil packs, a couple of cam sensors. The intake's the same, injector's the same, everything else. There was the studs on this exhaust manifold was the only difference. Other than that, really nothing. Haven't had to do nothing to it. So it's been relatively simple to get this thing in there, and it's definitely a different year model, a different make. So anyways, getting ready to start getting it in here. Hopefully get the motor mounts and get it set in there before it gets dark. Okay, so I've just been coming down with it level. It's actually working out pretty good. here, just going slowly. Got the mounts on. I'm just about close on this side here, and it's working out real good on being on these mounts here, because I can just basically just set it right down into place. The only other thing that I moved was I went ahead and took this AC line out of the way. There's no problem moving it, and I just folded the windshield washer bottle down here out of the way so I didn't have to worry about hitting it with the motor mount. But this way is working out really well, and I've just about got it set down here on to the frame, and we'll be finished up here for the night. Okay, bringing the motor in last night, we got it set down, bolted in. Bringing it in level was much easier, so I just strapped it underneath my mounts on both sides. You know, make sure you got it strapped good. But I've just got it set here. We got it bolted down. I think I'm going to work on a few things up here before going underneath and hooking stuff. Still got to get the flex plate bolted to the torque converter. Been having to keep everything covered up. It's been doing a lot of raining this week. So I think I'm going to start with these coolant for the heater hoses. I've got one over on this side. We're going to go ahead and reattach this one and get those clips on there. They're already attached to the firewall. I think I'm going to work on that first. We got our shifter cable. Just got everything kind of laid up here. We got our shifter cable right here. It's kind of tucked back. We're just going to reroute it right back here where it goes. And that just snaps down and then snaps right back onto there. So we got that. And I'm going to go ahead and get these coolant hoses on next. Okay, now we're going to put this bracket on for the air box. Getting these two bolts back in. And we're going to also reconnect this ground. We've got a couple of grounds that run to this. I've just got to locate this other one. I got this one, and there's another that goes with it probably. But anyways, we're going to get this back down here next. Okay, I just swapped over the newer battery post here because it's in better shape, and I also got the negative and swapped that over to my harness. Okay, I'm just reconnecting this piece that goes over here, and we're going to take and connect this that goes on that right there. Okay, I'm just putting this harness back into the cowl area. Just got to slide back down in there. I'm going to make these connections. Make sure that it's locked. Right. Okay, I'm just going to reconnect the fuel line. Hit the lock. And then we got this evaporative line back here. I'm going to put this ground. And we'll pop this little piece back in. And we'll just snug that down. Alright, we're just getting ready to hook the four-wheel drive axle up here. I've got the mark, as you can see, but it didn't move any. Anyway, I've got a 13 millimeter. I've got Loctite on these four. And we're just going to go ahead and just get this into place and move it as needed. And I'll go ahead and get our bolts started here. And so I got the medium Loctite. I'm just going to tighten these down really good and snug. And then we'll probably get on the center mount next, and then maybe the CV axles. We don't have a lot. I think while we're back here, we'll go ahead and hook up this wire that's going to the power steering though, because we're already right here at it. We might as well go ahead and get that. Okay, I got the wire back down here. It's just clipped right there, and we've just plugged it back in to the two plug-ins over here. Nothing to it. I'm just tightening down this little 8mm right here. We've already got the four-wheel drive tightened down. We've got a little heat shield that goes on this right here. We're going to, it just goes through that cloth cover, heat shield, whatever. We're going to put that back on here next, and we'll leave it loose on the other side, and we'll get over there and we'll fasten it back down on the other side, and we got another heat shield that goes on that. Okay, I'm just tightening the center mount, and you know, still a lot of movement, but we're just going to snug it down a little bit. If we need to adjust anything, we will. We're just going to kind of snug it down a little bit for now, and we'll snug down this back. It's just kind of loose. I loosened it just so it would drop down a little bit, but we're just going to snug them down a little bit. We'll come back and retighten it once I got all the exhaust and everything, just in case I have to have a little bit of adjustment. Now the next thing we're going to get on right here, we're going to get on the flex plate. We're going to get our bolts. We're going to Loctite those. We're going to tighten these down. Probably go about 25 foot-pounds on those. We've got 4 that we need to put back in here. We may as well go ahead and do that. We got it on our mind. So let's get some Loctite and get these 4 into place. Now when they removed this engine, they didn't pull the little plastic tabs out properly, so they're stuck in there. So I'll have to get those out before I can get my little plastic cover on there. Okay, fixing to start putting the bolts in the flex plate here. I got the bolts back in that heat shield there that I took out earlier. Got medium Loctite. I'm just going to go through, just snug them all down just a little bit, not tight, until I get them all in, and then I'll finish tightening them here. Got the first one there. Okay, I'm just torquing these. I was going 35 on these. The little bolts feel like they can handle 35, so I did that on the 3 of them. And of course, they're Loctited well. Now we just need to get the little bottom cover here. It just snaps right back into place. Nothing to that. Okay, so we just like push this back up in here. So it's got these little tabs that lock it in there, if I've got it going the right way anyway. They have it going backwards, and I did. Okay, so just like that, and there we have that. And I think we'll go ahead and just go ahead and get the exhaust on while we're under here. We've got, let's see, we got to tighten. Now we may just leave it because I need to snug this back down. We'll just leave it. It doesn't take just a second to hook this exhaust up. We're going to go ahead and get on the CV axles, I think, next. Okay, I was getting ready to put the CV axles in. I realized I forgot this little bracket for this passenger CV axle. It's just got 2 bolts that hold it, and I'm 13 millimeters. I'm just Loctiting this and moving it over to this new engine because I forgot this. But you can see where it goes there. Okay, so there's that bracket I was working on. Those 2 right there. I just took the 2 13's off. I'm fixing to slide the CV in. Now this one here is plenty wet from the fluid, so I don't need to put anything on that seal there. I'm just going to go ahead and just make sure it's clean. Slide it directly in over those studs. We'll put these on and carefully get it back into our knuckle here and back up into the strut. Okay, going back in with the CV axle, just going right through here. Going to keep this supported right here, and just going to slide it. I'm sliding it back in. This is clean. It does have fluid on the seal. We're just going to slide it right up over those studs right there, and then we'll get out here and work it into the hub. Okay, we're just slipping it on the studs. There we are. Okay, we'll get the nuts back on here and we'll get these snug down. Okay, so got a long ratchet just going in here with 13 and getting these and tightening them up. Okay, we're going to go ahead and slip this in carefully. We've got a little bit of white silicone, and we're going to push it up, make sure we don't put pressure. Just go ahead and try to get the top one in. Just pull it out a little bit. I'll put a little bit of Loctite on these for good measure.
That'd be freaking depressing.
Okay, we're going to... Okay, I got a 21 and a 24 on this side. We're going to go ahead and start tightening this down. This is going to have to be pretty tight. These are big bolts. I can't recall exactly what the torque is. I think it was like up around close to 180 or something, but it's just get it really tight, basically. So I'll probably go as tight as my torque wrench will go. And then I'll get my breaker bar and tighten it a little more. This is a really big bolt and it needs to be really tight. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish snugging these down, and I'll get my torque wrench on them and get them just as tight as I can with that. And then probably get my breaker bar on it. Got the axle nut on, but I do not have it tightened down as of yet. We'll wait till we get, we've got just kind of snugged down. When we get the wheel back on, we'll go ahead and give it the final torque down, which is basically going to consist of me using the breaker bar. Okay, we'll just slip this back in to its slot right here. Okay, we're just slipping our caliper back on, and we're going to Loctite these and get these started in the back. Okay, I'm getting this top bolt. We'll get down on the lower in just a second. Okay, now I'm on the lower one, getting it snugged up. Okay, so these are going to have to be really tight, at least 130 foot-pounds on these. Make sure to put medium Loctite. But the main thing is get them really tight. Okay, going ahead and getting this tire back on. Notice the center cap is still out, because we're going to need to get on this when the vehicle's lowered and get it tightened down nice and tight. Okay, getting ready to put the driver's CV axle back in. I put a little bit of grease on here, assembly lube. Make sure to put a little transmission fluid on that before you go back in. We're just getting ready to go back in here now. It's pretty easy. We're just going to slide it right back in here. We're going to go ahead and support this With one hand, we're going to take our rubber mallet and hit the end of this till it snaps right back into there. Okay. All right, we're going to hit the end of this with rubber mallet. And there you go. It's nice and solid. We're going to go ahead and slip this back into here. We're going to get a little grease on here first, though, a little white lithium. Okay, we're going to go ahead and slip this in. Make sure to support the knuckle and the CV axle. I'm going to get it up into place here. You got to go under these clips. And just get one of them started here. I'm going to have to push this back. Okay. Yeah, we're going to get our CV axle nut on. We won't be torquing it down until we get the wheel and everything on, get pressure on it. Okay, I'm going to get the nuts back on here, and we're going to take our 24 millimeter on this side. We're going to hold this side with a 21. Okay, it's just working on the top one here now. And you can also get this over here and get it propped up against something while you're turning it. Alright, just going to slip this little ABS cable back in. Okay, make sure to get these really tight. I was using a breaker bar. Just torque those down really tight. You'd at least need to go 130, if not more, on those. A really big bolt. Okay, now we're going to get the brake caliper back on. We just got to get the two bolts going into the bracket, the 18 millimeters, and we'll Loctite those. Okay, I got the caliper slipped on here. I've got my bolts, some Loctite. We'll go ahead and get on to the back side and get these started. We'll get the top one, and then we'll just get on that lower. Okay, we got the lower one. Go ahead and snug this one up. The 18 millimeter. Okay, now we're going to get this upper one and tighten these like 130 foot-pounds at least, or just get them really tight. You know, sometimes I don't fuss with torque on every little thing. I just make sure that it's really tight where it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, we're just going to snug this up a little bit. Like I said, when we get the wheel, this is a 32. When we get the wheel on there, we'll go ahead and finish torquing it on down. Or if you don't have a really, I mean, these call for like 180 foot or more, so if you don't have a torque wrench that goes that high, just get you a breaker bar and get it really, really tight. Okay, now we're just going to go ahead and get our wheel back on. Like I said, we get the wheel on, we'll go ahead and give it the final torque. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get the lugs back on, and like I said, we'll finish tightening that axle nut. Okay, with the tire on the ground, we'll go ahead and finish tightening down this axle nut here. Got my big breaker bar, and then we'll go ahead and tighten our lugs down to 100 foot-pounds. Okay, just getting ready to hook this exhaust up here. Nothing to it. I've got plenty of anti-seize on the studs, as you can see there. Be generous with that, and I'm just getting ready just to push it up here. I'll get this front hooked up, and then kind of this back usually kind of will go into place. We'll wiggle it around. You can see how it lines itself up as you just kind of wiggle it around there. And we'll just get these nuts back on here. Okay, just kind of pulling that pipe over a little bit. It's got a little slack just to kind of make sure it's lined up as I'm snugging this back part up. Okay, just kind of tighten those evenly, but it'll center itself up for the most part there, and that's snugged down, and we got this up here snugged down. Okay, so I took out 4 quarts exactly of the old transmission fluid. We're going to be putting back in 4 quarts. This container's 4 quarts. So we're going to go ahead. This is for the Mercon LV, I believe. And looking for my lid here. Okay. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and pour all this in. I'm going to get my funnel. We're just going to put that back in there so we know we got the proper amount, or it should be at least. Okay, we're just going to pour this in right here slowly. So this is full synthetic, and this is pretty good stuff. It's for the Mercon LV for a bunch of vehicles. This, you can get this at Walmart for like 17 something for the 4 quarts, which is much cheaper than the OEM stuff, and cheapest place you can get it, I guess. Okay, now I'm going right ahead and getting the oil in it. I've already got a new oil filter, and we drained out any excess from the oil plug, and we're going to go ahead and fill it up with 6 quarts. 520 here. Okay, I'm just getting ready to put this battery box in. We've got some bolts. There's a location here, stud. There's this one, and then there's one down here on the side, which is kind of tricky to get to. I think I'm going to leave that one out. It goes through this part to the side, but anyways, it will set. Definitely going to leave it out for right now because it's too difficult. And it also hooks in, I just now remember, it hooks into this box. I have to slide this little hook down there. So there we got it. I mean, it's pretty stable. I'm going to put these up here, and I'm going to get this nut right here and just tighten these 3 down for now, and this is going to be good enough. This one down here is dang tricky to get to when you have to remove this thing. Okay, we'll just snap these back in where they go here. We already got that connected. So this is all pretty much ready to go. I think we'll go ahead and get the battery up into place, and at least get the positive hooked up, and get the air and stuff hooked up here. We don't have just a few things like with the, of course, with our transmission cooler. I've got them plugged off, but I don't know that they wouldn't leak, so I may need to go ahead and get my other stuff hooked up here before I can crank it up. I'm just worried that those will leak and pump all my transmission fluid out. But I do have them plugged, as you can see, so probably could crank it up briefly, but I don't know if I want to do that. Anyways, I think we're going to go ahead and get the battery in, and then we'll work on hooking up some other stuff here. Okay, so we just set the front back on here. I've just got it set here. Just put those bolts there just to kind of hold it. And all I'm going to do is work on reconnecting these coolant lines. We'll hook these up. Nothing to it. And get our coolant hooked up. We'll probably go ahead and just connect these Freon lines. I really just want to get the transmission cooler lines on right here so we can crank it up and see what it's going to do. I don't want to just connect everything. I just want to kind of get what I need to get to kind of crank it up and see how it's going to do for starters, and then we'll go ahead and button everything up once we make sure that it's going to work just fine. Okay, got the hoses hooked up. Of course, it's got the arrows. It tells you which one goes where. I think we're going to go ahead and get some water in here. So I done got the oil, got the transmission fluid. I do have to go ahead and get my transmission cooler lines. They're poked down here, so I need to get those up and get those on here. Okay, so I just hooked up a few things. Got the power steering lines. We've got the fan hooked up. We got the coolant hoses. The big fan wire runs in under here. I haven't clipped all these in yet because I don't know what I'm going to have to do. So I've just kind of hooked up the things that need to be hooked up, like this little sensor, and I've kind of routed the wires over here, this ground, and everything is just kind of sitting here. I just want to get some water in here. I'm going to be flushing it out with some radiator flush, so I want to just get some water in, and I want to test it out, see if everything's working. Said I've got everything hooked up except for like headlights and the coolant bottle and stuff over here that doesn't really, it's nothing that's going to affect much that I know of other than like some minor things over here for now just to test it out. I think I'm good. I've got the battery in. I'm going to go ahead and set the intake. I've put some grease on that. But I'm going to go ahead and set the intake and just hook it up basically. And then we'll get our negative hooked up here lastly. We'll make sure all of our vacuum or intake and everything's hooked up so we can test it out. But you can see all I've been doing is just putting things back the way they were, and we've got everything just kind of setting together where we can test it out here. Okay, so just slip this back on here, pop this down in here. You got to separate it. I'm going to reconnect this one connector right here. This is, I believe, the only one we got. Make sure it's secured. We connected this and the vacuum hoses. So this is good enough for now. We're going to go ahead and get our negative connected up. We'll have to prime it up and get fuel back in the system and the fuel rail and everything. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down, get it primed up, and we're going to test it out here in a minute. Okay, I was hooking up this to the overflow, and I went ahead and bolted this down. Now I've got a bracket down here for the AC. I want to go ahead and that 10 millimeter, snug that down because we don't want that getting over there and bumping into the belt or anything. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and fill this up with water once I get this here fastened down. But everything else is connected, as you can see. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start getting the water in here. I don't know how much it's hold, but I've got my little degas funnel, and we'll just fill it up and work the air out until we get it full here. Okay, so we wound up getting 2 gallons in there, and it seems to be full, so I'm going to go ahead and crank it up. Okay, I got it cranked up on the second crank actually, and it's running pretty smooth. I'm going to have to wait and see if there's any codes come back, because I don't know how good these old pull packs, and I'll probably get some more and just replace them. But I've got it running here. It's been running for a few minutes. It cranked right up. Kind of surprised me. I didn't have to use any starter fluid, but it sounds really good. And now we just got to work on getting everything else put back together. So once we get the shroud up here on and we get the front back on, we'll be all done. But it's working. Everything appears to be doing just fine. So we'll go ahead and start putting the rest of it together. Okay, I just wanted to show y'all a few things on routing this. The reason I labeled this, the way this routes back around here and down to this and then up over here. Okay, then we had a switch, the hood switch, and then it wraps around to this little temperature sensor. So I was just putting that back. So all we got is like fog lights, headlights, headlights left here. So now we got all the screws in here where they go. I think we're going to go ahead and remove these. We got this here fastened down. We're going to go ahead and work on getting our front back on, getting our headlights and everything hooked up. But front's pretty easy to put on. I mean, just slip it over this, start bolting stuff down. Oh, I do have to get my hood latch before I forget. You've seen how I took that off. It's very simple. I just remove these 2 8mm and slip that back in there. Okay, I just got the bumper on. Make sure you do get your headlights in first. And I'm fastening down these, and then these will bolt on this other little piece and these 2 little clips. And of course I still got to snap the sides in. It's got a little screw over there, but we'll get that. And there's a couple, 3 little 8mm on the bottom, but other than that, the bumper's no big deal. Just about got it on. Okay, after getting the bumper on, is finished the sides. Remember the screw that goes behind this, clip this in. Done that on both sides. We got the battery clamp. We got it filled with water. Just putting this cowl back on. The next thing I'm going to do is just get the windshield wipers themselves back up here, and we just about got everything. Now I haven't put the inner fender, the plastic fender wells back in yet, but I'm going to be testing it out and everything. I'm going to put those in at a later time. Okay, I've just been letting it run for about 5 minutes. There's no drips or anything. And I'm sure it's going to have to do some relearning or something, but it's idling and sounding really good. You can hear it. And we got, I want to put some coolant flush in. Just got water in here for now. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to get the blocks and everything out and under. I've got the wheels torqued. So we'll go ahead and take it down the road, see how it's going to do. Okay, here we are going down the road. Just wanted y'all to see it is running. I do have check engine lights that I've got to clear because it had a lot of codes from the blown head gasket. So the engine sounds really good. I mean, I couldn't ask for any better. It cranked up on the second crank, so a very good engine. Something going on with the brakes with it still. I'm thinking maybe the master cylinder or something's bad, or it may just need to be, the brakes need to be bled, but I'm going to have to get on that next. But it's driving really good. Said you couldn't get over 10 mile an hour with it before. So you can see how it's handling. Steers and handles really good. Okay, here we are again. Now, there may be some bugs to be worked out of it, like I said, but so far the engine sounds really good. And I'm speeding here, but I mean, it has plenty of power. So it couldn't get over 10 miles an hour with it before. I had to have it towed, and I'm really happy with this engine. Very low mild engine, and I mean, it sounds like a new one. So just got a few other things to do on it, but it's so far it's testing out really well. Okay, that's going to do it. We're installing this Ford Explorer engine. This is a 3.5 liter, the TI VCT, I believe it is. So everything went smoothly, better than I thought. It said it was out of a 2018 Flex, and it was only like a little over 10,000 miles in it. Very little, the harness, which is a given. You're going to be swapping over a few sensors, and basically not that much. I spent, let's see, I've spent 4 days, not even really 4 days, because 2 of those were partial days. So probably all in all, I mean, 3 full days it's been spent on it. But I've spent 4 days on it altogether, regardless. Getting the old engine out, getting everything apart, putting the new engine in. It's really hasn't been that difficult. As far as cost goes, the engine ran me $900 for the engine because it was out of a Flex. Now, if you go on and you look at these Ford Explorer engines, man, they're going to be expensive, and I've seen them up over $2,500, $1,500 and up, just because it's out of an Explorer. And you'll not find one in a 2011 that's going to be low miles. I couldn't. You're talking 150, 175,000 miles, so you got to get something newer. So but the implications of that, if this works from a Flex, then you can use something from, as long as it's got the TI VCT engine, the same one, you can use it from 2011 up to a 2019, but you may have to swap some stuff over, which is not a big deal. But the block, the heads, and everything is the same. You won't really find a whole lot of information on the interchange, but I know it'll work because this engine worked. So I'm very happy with this. It's running good. I got to get the brakes fixed. There's a few other things on it. you know, the air conditioning and stuff. But I put another AC compressor on while I was putting the engine in. So have to get that fixed. A few other things, but you know, very nice vehicle. It's running very nice. Lots of power, very quiet, good sounding engine, and but all in all, everything went pretty smoothly. But that's going to do it for this video on installing this. You know, I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And as always, I invite you to subscribe. Thanks for watching.